Hi everybody, and welcome back to the workshop. I wasn't expecting to be here today. It's a really nice day in the middle of May, which rhymes unfortunately. Anyway, look, it's been a bit of a frustrating week because the sails haven't arrived. So where I was hoping to be today was down on the water, down at one of the marinas with the boat in the water, bending on the sails down there and nipping up and down to the chandlery to obviously buy bits and pieces to help fit the sails with. But they haven't arrived. No word yet from the sailmaker. So I've been just getting on with at least one other major job on the boat, and several that are important to the boat once it's in the water. So I'll go through those a bit today and just show you a little bit about what's going on. But I also want to talk about a little bit about my blog, the videos, video channel, and some of the things that I've been talking about in my blog recently. So it'll be more of a talky video today, and the film hopefully will just bag you up a bit and show you a little bit of what it's actually like to work here and to have built the boat. So yeah, let's get into it. In the workshop itself, what I'm actually doing right now is working on a component which I built, didn't fit, and this is the dividing bulkhead which will go in the centre of the boat to divide the battery box space from the dry stowage there. And it's basically a simple plywood bulkhead, and what I've just been doing is making the cleat stock for it, and just drawing things like strike up lines and such like. But at the same time, I'll just actually refocus and realign the camera so we can talk to me. At the same time, in the workshop, I just counted, and there's actually 5 jobs going on. So this is where a couple of components I've been working on. This is the laminated gaff saddle and rocker block for the gaff that I've already made, but at the same time I've been working on a second one which is slightly different. It's slightly more sophisticated, and it's intended for a different rig project, which is at some time I might build a second mast. I know that's a bit of a shock, but also build a second gaff, but in fact it would be a gunter, because the rig I've always had in mind for this boat is a curved gunter in a way a bit like some of the Dutch boats do it, which is it'd be a slightly taller rig. And I've just been making the gaff saddle, which is the laminated gaff saddle, and it's rocker block, and just started to make patterns for the it'll be the pieces that take the gaff. And in this you can see that the gunter will be a steep gunter which then curves. This will eventually have to be made in metal, and I've just been researching recently the best way of doing this, and I think it's bronze, but it's difficult to find bronze stock in that kind of dimension, but you know, working on. So that's the second job. The third job, which I just put photographs in on the boat, is there's loads and loads of polyester tape and shock cord by the yard, fittings by the dozen. These are things like strap eyes, and loads of bags of mixed fasteners. You know, that's, you know, self-tapping screws and such like, and little hooks. And this was my haul from the chandlery last week, because the job I'm doing on the boat is to make it more secure for going to sea. So that's literally tying things in and tying things down, and each job just seems to take a really long time. You know, I just put our sleeping firmer rests in yesterday, and kind of all afternoon just working out the alignments and working out where the bits go and putting those in. So that's job 3, and the fourth job on the bench right now is a small model making project, which I'm not going to put in this video because it's not really appropriate. And the larger of the job, which this is part of, has been making or starting to finish my original battery box to take ballast instead, or to have it ready for in the future when I can afford the battery. It's quite an expensive thing to buy, because I'm intending to be like a 160 amp hour battery, which is a big, heavy, it's like 60 kilos, you know, going in the centre of the boat there. So we'll go out to the boat, and I'll show you some of the jobs actually out there, and then in here talk about some of the aspects of the boat itself and my intentions with it, because that leads into other things. As I said, much more of a talky kind of video today. First thing I want to talk about today is my intentions and plans with the boat, and how it affects the build up to this point, and the things that it changes in my thinking about the finish of the boat right now. And that's really the difference between it being a day boat, which is what it's designed for, and the expedition boat, which I have in mind for it. So do that first. And the second thing is, I just wanted to talk about filming and blogging, which is something I've really failed to do in the past. And just as an experiment today, I did one of these jobs on film, and just found out how incredibly difficult it was to do without literally having my bum in the picture all the time and going, oh, does my bum look big in this? Well, yes, it does. So that was a failure during the building of the boat, and it's still a failure today. So the first, if you like, point of discussion today, as I said in a very talky video, is that what I've built is a slightly non-standard John Welsford design called Pathfinder, which is a 17'4", primarily open boat with a closed foredeck and closed stern deck. And I think John intended it as, the kind of maximum dinghy day sailor without going to a full-on cabined, cruising boat. And it's a superb design. I think it's one of his best designs, but others would argue with that. But it's really intended for, if you like, day sailing, quite a large family sailing, because it'll easy take sort of four or five people. But I always intended it as a day boat, a camping boat, but then moving into more of a living and camping aboard boat for longer periods, and for doing what I call expedition sailing with. And what I mean by that is the actual expedition or series of voyages which I have intended for the boat. And my basic plan is to, once we're in the water and done sea trials, is to take the boat down to the far west country of England, somewhere either Penzance or Newlyn, set myself up there and start to do a series of voyages in probably like 10-day chunks, going all the way around the British Isles, certainly England, if not the far reaches of Scotland. I'm not sure about that yet. And to film that and blog that and talk about that and talk about a lot of the places along the way as I go. So it's sailing, filming, expedition. And I intend to do that over several years. It's not a one-shot thing. This year I just really want to get on the water and maybe cover the far west of the West Country. I think it's one of the most lovely places in the whole of the British Isles. So I think as an expedition boat, it needs slightly different things to a standard day boat. Just thinking of a kind of a good example of one of those things. Well, it's possible that with this boat I'll actually cross the English Channel, and I can imagine some people now being absolutely horrified and some people going, yeah, that's fine, because to cross to France from the West Country, that's say from here or Falmouth or Foy, it's about 100 miles across to Roscoff and then about 110 miles around to Le Havre, which is more my favourite destination. And my previous trips of doing that with the Liberty and the Francis 26 tell me that that's anything from about 26 hours up to about 36 hours depending on the wind, and it can be quite a difficult trip in the channel in a small boat, especially if you've got any amount of wind and any amount of tide at the same time. So you get horrible wind against tide conditions because the tides in the channel just slop up and down and the wind just blows back straight across them. In my last voyage to France 2019 in the Hunter Liberty, which was a very light dynamic boat, and I had a horrible time for the last 12 hours of that voyage, desperately cold, violently sick, really increasingly tired, and I was really glad to get into port. So doing the same thing in an open boat, or nearly open boat, obviously a boat with a cuddy, 70 foot, there's a slight increase of difficulty there, a slight increase of risk, but that kind of counts as expedition sailing in this level of boat. And I think that level of intention adds significantly to the features that the boat has to have. And one of those is one of the things I'm dealing with today, which is ballast and eventually communication. Okay, so take two, or part two. In my blog, which is where I do all of the sort of serious technical subjects in writing and photography form, over the last, I think, 3 years, certainly the last 2.5 years that I've been doing this project, I've talked and researched quite a bit about sailing in small open boats from a perspective of the things that go wrong. And I took as my basis for that the RNLI, that's the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, statistics and reports for their launches, and see what they say are the main things that go wrong and that lifeboats get launched for. Now that's actually it was a really interesting project, because I had 2 or 3 years worth of RNLI launch statistic reports to work with. I think they've stopped doing them now, which is really annoying. Anyway, what I discovered was that the single most common reason for the call out of an RNLI lifeboat isn't what you think. So it's not heavy weather and boats capsizing and sinking. It's actually machinery failure, which is simply engine failure. And I think that is it's not only the single largest cause, it's the single largest cause by a very long way. So if you have an engine in a boat and it breaks down, it sounds as though what a lot of people do is simply call the RNLI when it's absolutely unnecessary. Sorry. Small example of that, during our last voyage with the little Hunter Liberty, my engine broke down. I was somewhere at anchor. I was in the Dart, a lovely place, and one morning I was due to leave the Dart and go around to Torbay to pick Jackie up. Engine wouldn't start. Wasn't a big deal in the Liberty because she's quite a light boat, only ton and a quarter. I had a canoe paddle. The tide was about to start ebbing, so all I did was paddle the boat down the river and sailed it round to Torbay. And that end, I just communicated with the harbour there and said, "Hey, look, I'm coming in under sail without an engine. Can someone be on the dock to catch lines for me when I get there?" No big deal. But in the same trip, we ended up in Dartmouth alongside with a broken mast, so that actually happened as well. And the local RIB, big powerful boat, went out 3 times while we were there. One to bring in another boat that had been dismasted, I helped him out a bit, and the other 2 times were for engine failure. And I spoke to the coxswain and he said, yeah, it's been a really bad year for engine failures. Don't know why. It's just, one of those statistical blips that they've been out that year 6 times just to tow people in because of engine failure. So that was a really big thing. So in terms of statistics with small boats, because there is a way of looking at their numbers and being able to break it down to, for example, motorboats, cruising yachts, day boats, dinghies, and whatever. And it was probably more relevant to look at the things that go wrong with, dinghies. There were very few capsizes and very few kind of problems of people coming out of the boat, which is one big concern when you've got an open boat, and very few incidents where an open boat got flooded or capsized and got into real difficulty. I think that it probably represents things that are other factors. For example, that maybe the racing dinghy sailors, for example, they are so quick and competent about doing their rescue drills that they just don't record it. And many language going awry today, is that also with small boats, I think there is more of a cautiousness in that it's very, very obvious if you're sailing an overpowered dinghy because you're struggling with it just to sail it. And so maybe it's just the natural tendency to be a little bit more cautious and perhaps to not be offshore or coming into the zone where you've got bigger breaking waves and then having a real struggle with the boat. It's maybe just not a feature because not many people do it. However, my intention with this boat is to sail in the local rivers and creeks. That's kind of an end point for each day, but also to sail the boat on quite long coastal passages in between the various places that I'm going into. So one of the jobs I did was just to measure out, for example, where or the distance between places I can put into in the southwest. It's absolutely ideal. Generally, you can put into somewhere within 2 or 3 hours, almost at maximum, and there are quite a lot of places, smaller places in between the major ones where you can get in and get the boat ashore. It's also really true of Brittany, and I think that's something I noticed from Roger Barnes' videos, is that there's loads and loads of places that have entrances and slipways, really good slipways, so that there's much greater opportunity for people to sail their small boats in rivers, launch them and sail them and pull them out again. So that's something that I've been looking at quite a bit. But if I'm going offshore, which I may be at some point, then this boat needs really 2 things. It needs its ballast sorting out, and ultimately it needs its communication sorting out. The rest of it is just sailing. So it's kind of full circle, coming back to today's work. 2 weeks ago I had a bit of a shock when I was starting to do the jobs of setting up the trailer and the boat for its road trip, and I opened up the central compartment thinking, I know I've got to do something but I'm not quite sure what. And what I realised instantly was that I hadn't finished the central compartment of the boat. I don't know why. It's a long time ago since I was building that, a year and a half ago. And what I hadn't done, I haven't put the top bearer in, I haven't put the bulkhead in, and I haven't put the battery box in. And I think because I wasn't really sure about the battery job, and I've kept putting it off because the battery is a big, expensive and really heavy thing that's got to go in there. 60 kilo 160 amp hour battery, which I always thought, yeah, I'm going to have a battery as the main ballast, because then it's a single thing doing two jobs. It's being the ballast and it's being the power source for communication, lights, GPS, AIS, whatever. Of course, the truth is I haven't got any of that stuff at all, so I think I forgot about it because I don't have a pile of electronic kit sitting on my table upstairs going, stick me in the boat. It just isn't there. So for a few weeks I've been thinking about sort of backing off on that project a bit because of the expense, and just going with standard kind of day boat sailing stuff. So that would be a handheld GPS, which I do own. I've got torches. Don't have a handheld VHF, but part of the way there towards the normal safety stuff that the boat needs. But the big thing is that I hadn't dealt with is I hadn't ballasted the boat. Now, John Welsford, in his talk about the Pathfinder in the notes, says when you first put it in the water, sail with a bag of sand each side of the centreboard. I thought, okay, so the boat needs a little bit of extra ballast. Now, a bag of sand in a builder's merchant in England, it's about 20 to 25 kilos. So I thought, okay, I need to be working on about 50 kilos of ballast. And what I eventually did when I was thinking about the battery was up that a little bit to then have my ballast be 60 kilos in the form of an AGM battery right in the middle of the boat. It's the best place for it, and that's the ballast sorted out, and then that's the potential to have things like fixed radio, fixed GPS, lights, and whatever. And that's, if you like, coming into the expedition side of the boat. So what I'm doing now is actually the expression is making provision for, and that's making provision for that project when I come to it, which is that I've designed and built the battery box around a normally well available range of batteries, and what I'm doing right now is fitting the bulkhead and then fit the battery box. And I've looked at the battery box also in terms of what ballast it can take, and the job I did yesterday was to zip around the garden and pick up a pile of granite blocks which we had for a garden project, and I stuffed as many as those that would go into the battery box, and found that I came to 47.5 kilos of granite. So again, it's really close to the ballast requirement for the boat. So what I may do, in fact the job I'm kind of doing is preparing that compartment to take the battery box, which will get fitted, the bulkhead will get fitted, and I will put 6 granite blocks in there, and that'll be my ballast for now. So that's a long an awful lot of talk today, and it gives, I think, a little bit of a clue as to what this boat's going to do, what I'm going to do with it, and how I'm going about the practical sides of doing all of that work. So phew, long talky video, sorry about that, but I feel that there are some subjects in the boat I can just do with film, many I can do with film and a little bit of talky, and some just need lots of talk. So sorry about that today. Let's stick it on video. If you enjoy it, well, great. And I will see you next time, hopefully with the first road video. That's us going out on the road, getting to the slip and putting the boat in the water. I know everyone wants to see that. I want to see that, and I want to see sails, and I want to see them up. So there you go. Have a good day.